Welcome to the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast, where we remember a time when stacks of cards were held together with rubber bands and Mickey Mantles were put in bike spokes. We hope you will enjoy and reminisce as you come along with us as we tell stories about the baseball cards from the Golden Age of Baseball. We will examine the state of the vintage baseball card market and talk to some of the greatest collectors in the hobby. You won't be hearing us talk about any chrome or shiny cards here. Now, to take you on this retrospective journey, here's your host, direct from the shallow end of the gene pool, my son, Mike Moynihan.
Yo, and hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast. I am your host, Mike, this week, every week. Glad you are here with us. And this week's going to be fun. This is an episode that literally came to me today. And it one of those things that popped in, kind of brainstorming ideas with my guest, and was like, hey, we started talking about some sets. And one thing I love discovering is new things. And I hope you guys do as well in the hobby, because there is so much to learn. It's a nonstop, never-ending journey of learning in the hobby. And even in the vintage world where, from, basically post-war through 1980, there are so many gems out there of sets that I think go largely ignored. And again, I think a lot of collectors know about them, but I think it kind of takes obviously a back burner to Topps. And so I wanted to go through that. We've got a dozen or so sets that we're going to throw out to you. We're going to have some references, some other stuff, but let me bring my guest on and we'll start talking about all this stuff. First time on the show, Dan from Dan's Vintage PC. How you doing, Dan?
Good evening, Mike. How are you? Nice to be here.
I am wonderful. You betcha. Excited to have you on the show. I think we're going to do a home and home. You'll be on my show, and then in a few weeks, I'll be on your channel. And so we'll give it. I want you guys to hear about Dan's YouTube channel, and if you are interested, go to check it out. Go watch it. But we're going to get into some sets, Dan, that I feel, as I just said in the intro, that are ignored. Maybe is a too strong of a word. This list, when you look at this list of sets that we're going to be talking about, how do you feel like the general hobby perception is of them?
People want Topps sets. They want Bowman sets. That's great. But to me, when I complete this 51 Burke Ross set, it's going to mean more to me than some of the Topps sets that I've completed, because it's, you got to go out of your way. You got to do research. You got to find it in different areas. And so these sort of cards that are very unique to that era actually speak to me maybe a little bit more sometimes than the Topps cards. So that's kind of my feeling. The other thing is, a lot of these sets are limited amount of cards. So like the 54 Red Heart that we're going to talk about only has 33 cards in it. I mean, albeit one's a mantle, but that's a doable set as opposed to 792 cards,
Right.
Topps set.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on some of the good points about some of these sets, is that most of them are, the ones we're going to talk about are pretty gorgeous, have some amazing players within the checklists, and obscure enough that they just don't command the same dollars by and large, right? There are certain exceptions, no doubt, but they can be done relatively cheaply and not big checklists where you have to go after hundreds and hundreds of cards. And so maybe opening you guys' eyes to some of this stuff. Hopefully you hear all these sets that Dan and I are going to talk about and you go, yep, I knew about that, or yeah, I love those too, or whatever. And that's great. This may reinforce that love of those cards. And Dan, we have a lot of sets to go through, but I do want you to talk quickly about, I think we first met at the National last year. Is that right? Or did we just meet at Strongsville for the first time?
First time I met you was at the Chantilly show, briefly, interestingly enough, in front of Howie Chasser's little table there. And then, of course, we met through mutual friends at Strongsville.
Right.
And so That was nice because the friends that we've met through, we've talked about, like Matt and John Keating and people like that, which, I think we're both big fans of guys like that.
Absolutely. It's funny though, because I've been watching. You've had your YouTube channel now for how long?
It'll be a year in the first week of June.
Yeah, I've been watching for a while. I recently subbed to your channel, but I've been watching it because it pops up on my feed because you talk about things that I like to watch. And so it's weird. I looked, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, how can I not be subscribed to him? He's in my feed every day, or whatever. And so I'm a fan of your channel. I love what you do. So,
well, what I tried to do was, I sub to like 100 and something channels, so it's like I'm watching all different kinds of stuff. But what I try to do is concentrate on the history of the game. And then I bring on these super collectors so we can do a deep dive into like Zach Wheat or Ali Reynolds or, Sam Jethro, or be a big guy like, let's say, Lou Gehrig. We can do a deep dive because the person who I'm bringing on has so much in terms of the cards and the information that it becomes kind of it's almost kind of like a lecture in some ways.
Yeah.
But
who are you going to get for Lou Gehrig? Who are you going to get for Lou Gehrig? I'm curious.
Some guy, I don't know if you've ever heard of him. So,
some chump.
When I had Matt on, it was Hank Aaron, and he's gotten so many, like oddball Hank Aarons, and he's just so like meticulous about landing these cards that it was just such an education for me to go and have this as a guest on my show. And I have a pretty good Hank Aaron collection, but it's nothing compared to his.
Well, I'm excited about being your guest on the Lou Gehrig episode. Again, that'll be a few weeks from now, guys. So don't be looking for it right now, but it'll be out soon enough. And you can watch me make a fool of myself talking about Lou Gehrig. But getting into these sets here, the first one I want to start with, let me back up. The first thing I want to tell you guys is, as we talk about this stuff and anything that you go, wow, I want to learn more. There's so many places to do that out there. I'm going to give you one tonight. It's Baseball Cardpedia. And I actually don't know that I've talked about it a lot on this show, which is shocking to me because I use it all the time. And it's a website, and you can go there and basically look up anything. And is it perfect? No. Is it completely comprehensive? No. But there is a lot of information here, and I'm going to pull up the first set we're going to talk about. I usually just sort all sets by year. I know generally what year I want to go to. In this case, 1975. And we're going to talk about it. It'll show you a list of all the sets that they have information about. Ooh, the Hostess sets. We're not even talking about the Hostess sets. Oh, I don't want 1975 tops. That's boring. Everybody knows that. We're going to do SSPC Superstars or Puzzleback. I think it's
the full set. I'm surprised they don't have it on there for full set. It's,
Superstars.
630 cards. Yeah, that's what Yeah,
that's not it either. Well, anyway, there you go. That shows that it's not comprehensive.
Try 76. They also sometimes say that it came out partially in 75 and partially in 76. So if you try 76, it might be in there, the full set.
There it is. SSPC, 630 cards. Okay.
Yeah.
This is a interesting set. It's quite bland design, I guess, is maybe the right way to put it. How would you describe it?
The plan was to do kind of like a 53 Bowman thing, where they do, the beautiful color picture on the front, but nothing else there. And then there's a bunch of information about the player on the back. And the interesting thing about it is that it's a totally bootleg set. They didn't have, this has a Tom Seaver card as a Mets logo on it. They didn't have any of the rights to do it. They didn't have any signatures from anybody. They didn't pay any of the players. They just put out a baseball set. And the funny thing about it is the pictures that were taken were mostly taken in Shea Stadium and Yankee Stadium, like the Tops were at the time. But they were taken by Keith Olbermann. You know who Keith Olbermann is, right?
Sure.
He's he was ESPN and MSNBC, and he's a political guy. But back then, he was a baseball card nut. He still is. I think he has like one of the best collections in the world. So they put out this magazine called Collectors Quarterly in 1975, winter of 1975. It says it right there. Keith Olbermann is the editor of this, and the center fold was a bunch of these SSP cards and SSPC cards. And so you could actually take the card out and cut them out and make yourself little cards for them. And they also advertised that you could mail away for the set, which the entire 660 card set would cost you $9.95. And the brains behind it was Michael Arenstein, who is the MA of TCMA. So this is a guy who had been creating sets for years. And in fact, after the SSPC set got shut down essentially by Topps and MLB, he did minor league sets after that for years. And Michael Arenstein is still alive.
Yeah. A couple notable cards in there for me. Number one, there's a cool Ted Williams card with him in a Rangers uniform, as you know, a picture from him being the manager for the Rangers, which he was only in 1972, the manager for the Rangers. So obviously a dated picture that they just reused at some point in the 75. And it really has the Dennis Eckersley rookie card, right? Because you've got
there's a Robin Yount rookie card.
There's a Robin Yount and a George
rookie card.
And a George Brett.
And George Brett, yeah. So you get some pretty unique cards. There's a beautiful Nolan Ryan card also.
And there's a Harmon Killebrew with him on the Royals, I believe, in that set.
Yep.
So, which he never really played for the Royals. He was only a spring training invitee, I think, in '76 or something like that.
Yeah, he and there's Yogi Berra and Gaylord Perry. So like there's a pretty good selection of players. And I got this, and you know, the great thing about the SSPC now is that nobody knows about it. So you can get these cards for virtually nothing. I got this card, Tom Seaver, for $8. and then I sent it away and it got an 8. So now I have an 8 of that card for essentially $8 plus the grading fee. So
that is, and that's the other glorious thing about these sets that we're going to talk about. Largely inexpensive for big name players, right? Does Hank Aaron have an SSPC? I'm pretty sure he does, actually.
He does. It's a beautiful photo of him in the Milwaukee Brewers uniform, and he's just standing there, and he's got it's just a very sort of regal kind of Hank Aaron card. And it's a card that I've been trying to get, but that's actually one of the ones that's a little harder to get because it's in high quality and people want it. So
high demand,
yeah.
Well, in the 60s, there's some really cool kind of under the radar sets too, particularly in 1964. And that's where I want to go next.
Yeah.
You have the 64 Topps stand-ups and the 64 Topps Giants. The Giants I've owned and loved for a long time. Mm-hmm. The stand-ups, I've always admired them from afar. I never owned any until recently. And
same here.
I love them.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely love them. I've got a Koufax, a Mantle, Mays and Aaron, Drysdale, a bunch of guys off at PSA right now being graded. I'm certainly going to keep the Mantle and the Koufax and maybe the Clemente. There's a Clemente in there. Mm-hmm. What about that set stands out to you? No pun intended.
So
stands up.
What stands up for me in that set is there's 22 short prints. And the short prints include 8 Hall of Famers.
Yeah, Yastrzemski's a short print.
Yeah. Yes, is a tough one. And I got this one, which is Spawn, not too long ago. It's my first and only card from this set. And I'm looking at it, and it's beautiful. And it's just, it's the colors, the green, the yellow, the pose, everything. The whole thing is beautiful. And I'm like, why did I never pay any attention to this set until now? But now I am. So 77 cards in the set, not that much. 21 Hall of Famers though. So that's gonna cost you a little bit.
Yeah, it is chock full. We had a horde of them in the Grail collection find that really made me go, I seen them in person, seen them at shows, never really investigated it. There were 2 mantles, so I'm going to keep one of those just to have. And I'm excited about adding that to my collection. The Topps Giant set, which I know you have a complete set of,
Yeah.
has long been one of my favorites, just because because it's bigger. It's a postcard size set, right? You've got just these amazingly awesome images of these players, right?
Yep.
And a lot of them are close up, headshots that are just on the bigger size. They just really stand out, and they're absolutely awesome. That's actually a really cheap set. You want basically the cheapest playing days mantle you can find. It's a 64 Topps Giants. What are your thoughts about the Topps Giants set?
Well, it's 60 cards, 3 players from each team. So you end up with, 30 something Hall of Famers or something. It's a ridiculous amount of star power in the set. And in many respects, like for instance, Mays' card is a better looking card than his 64 Topps. So you end up, you're right, these photographs are terrific. And the only one I have slabbed is the mantle. And ironically enough, that's not the greatest mantle picture. I mean, it's not bad, but it's not his best.
Right.
But the Koufax is the same picture that they used in the 65 Topps, which I love. So you get a lot of quality in that set. And like you said, the price is right. I mean, you can do that set. I owned it as a little kid. I'll tell the story of how I lost it if we weren't running out of time. But I repurchased it about 5 years ago, upgraded a little bit, but the rest of it, they're all in top loaders. And I pull them out all the time. I've got the Spawn and Clemente and Mantle and Mays and Aaron, all of them up in the display because they're beautiful pictures.
Yeah, tremendous star power in that set. Also in the 60s, you had, I'm going to talk about this and then we'll focus on one to start, but Fleer, started doing cards, essentially baseball cards anyway. They did some Laughlin set, some other things, but by and large, their first real set was 59 Fleer, which was exclusive Ted Williams set, right?
Mm-hmm.
80 cards, I believe, if I remember right. I have the whole set. I've got it in a collection that I bought, and I kept that. I wanted to keep that. There's a card with Ruth and Williams. It's very popular. There's a card that is essentially a short print because it got taken out of production because I totally going blank on whose picture it is that he's with.
Yeah, he's with
Bucky Harris Harris.
Right.
Yeah, is it Bucky Harris?
They didn't have the rights to Bucky Harris.
Right.
So they short printed it because they had to take it out.
Yeah.
My
Great
friend
set.
Matt Walker, who was my guest when I did my Ted Williams show, has the whole set. He's got a box. He's got, the whole 9 yards. It's like one of those super collector things. But it's a set that you can get a pretty cheap Ted Williams for. But I'm like those people that kind of resent the set because it caused there not to be a 1959 or a 1960 Ted Williams Topps card.
That's a good point. No question. But good for Ted Williams. He was known for chasing after the buck. The almighty dollar spoke to him, and that's fine. It's actually a great set. There's all kinds of casual shots of Ted Williams fishing, or
right,
got a giant marlin next to him, or just different milestones of his career being highlighted on different cards. And so there's you can buy those really cheap, certainly ungraded, and even graded, they're not really that expensive. But then, so they had 59 Fleer, all Ted Williams. Then they did 60 and 61 Fleer. 60 Fleer included Ted Williams, who's, I think, the only active player in the whole set at the time. It's actually his last card. I consider that Ted Williams' last card. Mm-hmm. And then 61, both of those sets chock full of star power, as you were talking about earlier,
right? Because
it's basically just all-time baseball greats, right?
Mm-hmm.
60 Fleer has multiple colors, yellow, green. I've got Lefty Grove that's signed right here. Have it out because it actually says Lefty Gomez on the flip, and that's
yeah. I saw that in your video.
But Lefty Grove signed. They're okay. I mean, the design's obviously not exactly exciting or anything, but it's cool. 60 61 Fleer is a little bit less popular, it feels like, but there's a Ruth, there's a Gehrig in both sets, I believe. Certainly 60 Fleer. And I do think in 61, I know there's a Gehrig in 61. I'm trying to think if there's a Ruth. I think there is. But there's Ty Cobb, in those sets. And I mean, just so it was a way to connect children of the 60s to these players from decades earlier. And there just weren't a lot of sets doing that at the time. There weren't a lot of ways to do that, certainly mainstream. And cheap ways to get these all-time greats on vintage cards. They're not 2023 tops showing Ty Cobb. It's from 1960 or 61. So just a cool under-the-radar couple of sets that, again, it's not that people aren't familiar with them. It's just maybe they've never investigated it of maybe I want to collect these, maybe I want to or get some stars from my favorite team or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just a good way to do that. Okay. Let's go back a little bit. I'm going to skip. I was going to do Hires Root Beer, but I think it's so obscure that it's just such a great design. Like, I just absolutely love it. I've always been enamored with it. And I was actually 58 Hires Root Beer is what was going to be the design for 56 Bowman.
56 Bowman, right? Yeah.
But obviously we all know there was no 56 Bowman. So Topps kind of kept that in the vault and released it. They printed the Hires Root Beer cards, and I have the Mays and the Aaron, and I just love them. Actually can't believe I actually own them, and they're not cheap. Unlike the Fleer cards can be had all relatively cheap. But let's go back to 55 double headers. Why do you think this is an under the radar set, Dan?
This one has a lot going for it. It's not just that they're cool pictures, and I got the Hank Aaron in Strongsville, so it's fresh in my mind. But there's a second player on the other side, which is reminiscent of the Mecca double folders, the T201s.
Yeah,
did this. And then there's also a ton of star power. I mean, you got Ted Williams, you got Jackie Robinson, there's a Harmon Killebrew rookie, there's Warren Spahn, Hank Aaron, Al Kaline early card, Ernie Banks early card. But there's this thing about them, and it's only how many cards? It's 66 cards. It's not even that much. If you take all the cards and you put them in order, and you see there's a stadium behind you, you put all the cards in order, you get an entire stadium.
Oh,
I don't know.
Never knew that.
I know our friend Alex at Bowman 53 has tried to do that with the backgrounds of the 53 Bowmans, but this is actually set up to do that, where you get the whole stadium. So if like the card after Aaron would have a little piece of the stadium further, and so you get an entire rounded stadium if you have them all. And of course, I got the Al Rosen, who I collect, in a nice slab there. So they're a little tough to slab because they're a little longer than most cards, but
right,
really beautiful artwork, a lot of star power, not that many cards, and just kind of a cool set.
Yeah, I don't own any of those. That's I'm also a type collector. I think just by nature of being a collector, you kind of want examples of different sets in your collection. Yep. To me, that creates a well-rounded collection, I guess. I don't have to have them all, but I like having, an example of each set that I can. Love the double headers, though. I've always loved those. 54 is go ahead, Dan.
I'm be going after the Jackie probably next, because the Jackie's
that's cool, very cool card. Him swinging full body, because it's interesting who's on the full body side and who's on the stats side. Usually the star is on the full body side, right?
Yeah, the Ernie Banks, he's on the reverse because he's like second year.
Yeah. 54 had a great run of cards that are kind of obscure. I hate saying obscure, under the radar. That's what I really want to focus on in terms of how I describe these. Go ahead.
54, people say it's maybe the best year for cards ever, because you've got, obviously, 54 Topps is a great set. 54 Bowman is not their best set, but it's still a Bowman set. And then you've got the sets we're going to talk about, the regional stuff, and it's just, there's so much going on. And if you don't have a Stan Williams in the Bowman or Topps, but you do have him in Red Heart, so you can get a Stan Williams if you Stan Musial, sorry, if you
Stan Musial,
collect enough of these different sets.
Yeah, so 54. Let's talk about the Red Heart. Let's just talk about that one first. How can you not love Red Hearts? Like, to me, it's dog food cards. Like, that's the best thing, right?
Yeah, it's a dog food set, which you wouldn't expect to be great. I don't even know, are there any other dog food sets around? But it's got this. I mean, this is like, shout out to Don Field of Dreams, and also to Adam from
Sports.
Yeah. The both of them are big fans of this card, and I think we're triplets. We all have it in 4. But it's Stan not having enough cards in that time frame, and this is like the big one. So it's a 33 card set, which is not that much. There's 11 cards each of 3 different colors. You got the red, you got the green, and then you got this light blue. And there's 11 cards of each for 33 total. But and I'm sort of building the set. The old phrase is you're not really building a set until you have the mantle. So I don't have the mantle yet. It's one of those ones that's at the top of my list. But I think once I get the mantle, I'm just going to go full stream ahead, because I have Stan and I have Spawn, and Duke Snyder's the only other really tough one to get. Kiner's in there, and it's mostly I looked this up. It's mostly players from. Oh no, I'm sorry. The Red Heart was actually a dog food, but it was made by Morel Meats. Morel Meats actually made their own sets later on in the 50s. So there's like a 58, 59, 60 Morel Meats, mostly Dodgers, and there's a Koufax in that, which is tough to get, and it's an expensive card. So Morel Meats kind of bounced in and out of the card business for a little while there in the mid to late 50s.
Yeah, I have the Musial in that set over there, the Beast, but I don't have the Mantle's high on my list too. It's really the only mainstream-ish Mantle that I'm kind of missing besides the 52 Topps. So I definitely, that's a card I'd love to own, really, in any grade. And it's an expensive card. The Musial's relatively expensive, but the rest of them are all not crazy, for the most part. The set I want to talk about, the Wilson Franks set from 54. And so we go from dog food to hot dogs, and I really don't know that there's that much to distinguish between the two.
I'm gonna stand up because I didn't take mine down, so sorry about this.
It's all right. The Wilson Franks set, it's not even listed on the Baseball Cardpedia. I was talking about Baseball Cardpedia so highly, and it disappointed me now twice as I've been looking for things. But that has 2 cards that I own of it. I own the Gil Hodges and I own the Roy Campanella, because they're in the 300 great cards set. But it also has maybe the prettiest Ted Williams card that exists.
Yeah.
Very pricey card for that one.
That Ted Williams is like the Mantle of that set. You can't really say you're building the set until you get the Ted. And it's really pricey. I know somebody who's completed the set. It's a pricey set to complete because there's a lot of Hall of Famers, and you're even paying up for guys like Nellie Fox and Enos Slaughter. And I did get this gentleman, Mr. Feller, in the Philly show in, January. So that is my only flying hot dogs. I love the flying hot dogs.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so cool. Obviously produced by Topps. They look incredibly similar to 54 Topps cards, other than it's only one picture instead of two.
And the backs are beautiful too. I mean, it's a beautiful set if you can get over the flying hot dogs, and you can afford to spend a little bit of money on obscure Ted Williams cards.
All right, here's a question, Dan. You're from New York. Mustard or ketchup on your hot dog?
Mustard.
Okay, good. All right, we can still be friends. That's good to know. All right. 54, we got the Red Heart. We got the Wilson Franks. Then we have the Dandy potato chip
Yes.
set. And why don't you tell everybody about that one?
So Dandy potato chips, let's see. What did I got notes. 29 cards, so not that hard. Mostly Indians and Pirates, which gives you a lot of star power. But they also put some other stars in there. They got Gil Hodges, Monty Irvin, of course, Mantle, Rizzuto, and Snyder. They're similar to the other regional food cards of the era. And of course, the one thing that you have to worry about with these is there's quality issues, because they did come in bags of potato chips, so you end up with grease stains and stuff. So I paid up for this. It's a 4. It doesn't have much in the way of grease stains, but it was like $300. So I mean, we're not talking cheap cards here.
Right.
But then I got the Luke Easter, who was also on the Indians, and despite his crazy eye look, this was not an expensive card. I think it's a 2, but I think it cost me about $30. So you could probably go through the non-stars for like $30 a piece. But again, if you don't have the Mantle, you're not really building the set. But 29 cards shouldn't be that hard to do.
Yeah, and it's potato chips. So if you buy the set raw, or you get the cards raw, you have to lick them and see if there's any salt residue from the potato chips.
I've seen examples. I look for these cards. I've seen examples of cards that just you could see the potato chip stain on it. So
oh yeah, but not that dissimilar from a gum stain or hot dog issues like Conn's Meats, or just all kinds of. It's so weird that they would put the cards in the packaging. Cracker Jack cards that were in back in 19. I can't remember if it was 15 or 16 where they were actually in the Cracker Jack.
14 came in the package. 15 you had to mail away for.
Right. So yeah, they've been doing that for as long as they've been cross promoting. When I was a kid, we had cards in cereal boxes, right? That was where I would get or on the back of my Kraft macaroni and cheese,
right. Or the bottom of your Twinkies.
Or my Slurpee.
When they put the Kellogg's cards in, when I was a kid, when they put the Kellogg's card in and you dug into the Kellogg's, to the whatever it was, the Fruit Loops or whatever, to pull out the card was actually encased in like a little plastic bag.
Yeah, they were cellophane wrapped back then.
So they got a little smarter after the all the problems with the dog food and the hot dogs and the potato chips.
That's right. Speaking of Kellogg's, I want to touch on Kellogg's real quick. Maybe it's a childhood thing for me and why I love them so much, but there's not a year of Kellogg's from say 70 to the early 80s, 1970s when they started, that I don't just love the Kellogg's cards. I love the funkiness of the 3D design. I love, I don't know what my son's doing in here, but he's crawling in the room. So all the Kellogg sets, full of stars, full of Hall of Famers, like everybody you can imagine is in that. So I try to have multiples, different stars from every year of Kellogg's to represent each year. And I just absolutely love them.
Yeah, I think when I was a kid, they were like the things that you got when your mom gave you the cereal and you dug in and whatever. It wasn't that big of a deal. They weren't like opening up the wax packs of Topps. But I've actually really come to appreciate them also. And I have a few from the 1970 set that I just picked up that I got graded, and they all graded pretty high. So I may start building the 70 set, which I think is 75 cards, if I'm not mistaken. And like you said, all Hall of Famers and stars, and I mean the whole concept was that they were only stars in the
Right.
Kellogg for the most part. Guys that are now kind of obscure but were stars then, but
Yeah.
also guys that are evergreen stars.
The Kellogg's 3D Superstars, I think, was like the name of the full name of the set, right? So enough about Kellogg's, but if you don't love Kellogg's cards, go check them out. You would. As we progress back, I think the last one we want to talk about on my list is the Burke Ross set.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you want to tell everybody about the Burke Ross set?
So I think you have this card too. I first got this card because I wanted a Joe DiMaggio Playing Days card that I could afford. And so this is a PSA 2.5. So I got this card. And so I had one card in the set. And then I started getting other cards in the set because I do Spawn and I collect Musial and Berra. And then I just started getting them. And Rosen, I got the double panel of Rosen and Rizzuto. So I end up now with about 10 cards. And I look at the set, and it's only 40 cards. The set itself is actually 72 cards, but there's only 40 baseball players in the set. And the 40 baseball players are set 1 through 10, 2 through 10, 3 through 10, 4 through 10. So you can do a checklist that way. And so I realized that there's a lot of star power in this one. There's an alternative Whitey Ford rookie, the 51 Whitey Ford rookie. There's a classic Yogi Berra. There's a classic Ralph Kiner. There's a lot of star power in it, and it's mostly Yankees and Phillies, but you get guys like Kiner and Rosen, who at the time was a star, and who else is in it? There's a few other non-Yankee stars in it too. But
Allie Reynolds is in it. Robin Roberts is in it.
Robin Roberts, right? Yep.
Bobby Brown, who I love, who died not too long ago.
You get Whiz Kids Phillies, Yankees in the midst of winning 5 straight World Series in 40 cards, and once you get by the heavy hitters, I hate to call them commons. I don't really think any card is a common because every card is a story, but even the guys that aren't Hall of Famers or aren't that well known are cool cards, and they're not that expensive. I picked up 2 PSA 7s of 2 of the major members of the Whiz Kids. Both of them cost me $30 each. So you can build this set, and the only reason I'm not finished with it is because there are a couple that are a little harder to find, but I'm getting there. I think I'm down to 5 with one. I have an open bid on one of them now, so it ends in a couple of days. So I should be down to 4 pretty soon.
Which one is it? I'll go bid you up.
Just a matter of tracking them down. So looking forward to doing the show on that one. But I think that it's an underrated set in large part because it is kind of a bootleg set. It wasn't authorized, which is why. Stan Musial's in it also. I have the Stan card in a drawer over here. And also, even though the pictures are cool, the quality of the printing is not terribly great. But what is nice about it is that SGC is very forgiving. So a card like this gets a 5. I don't know if a card like this that wasn't Burke Ross would get a 5 because they were, as you know, they were done in double panels, and then you can tear this down the middle and end up with 2 different cards, or you can put it together as a panel. One of the problems with the panels, and I have a lot of the panels because you can get 2 cards of 2 players in one, is that they split sports. So Richie Ashburn is on the same panel as Bob Cousy, which means that you don't want to buy Bob Cousy is pre-rookie Bob Cousy, so it's an expensive card. So you don't necessarily want to buy that panel unless you want to spend a lot of money. So Ashburn is actually one of the few guys I don't have right now because it's a little harder to find him solo and find him at a decent price.
Yeah, I have the DiMaggio. I technically own it. I have it. It's off at PSA right now. I've owned several other Burke Rosses just raw, just over the years. It's a very underrated set. I really got turned on to it when I really started doing the Last Card Hall of Famer project and kind of like, I want the last card of every player. And DiMaggio, that's his last Playing Days card. but he also has there's a 52 Burt Ross set.
Mm-hmm. The 52 Burt Ross set is a harder set.
Same
to build.
picture, essentially. It's sized a little bit differently, if I'm right.
Yeah, they're
Hard set to
sized
build.
a little bit longer. Most of the same pictures, but 52 you're not going to be able to build because the mantle is ridiculously overpriced. There's a Jackie Robinson in that set. There is another DiMaggio, technically not a playing days, although I talked to Darren from Return to Collecting, believes it is a playing days card because it has his 51 stats on the back, and it's just like the 69 mantle. It came out after he stopped playing, so I don't know. I kind of think Darren's right, and I'm probably going to end up getting the card, but I'm not going to build the set because I don't want to have to pay for the Jackie and the mantle.
I actually would agree with Darren as well. And I mean, I have the 51 because I bought it in a collection and I couldn't pass it up, and I'm thrilled to own it. But eventually I'd love to get the 52 as well in the DiMaggio, just to have them be at a good little bookend, have both of those. And yeah, it's the paper stock's the cardboard stock's a little bit thinner than normal cards. It's not terribly high quality printing. There's a lot of blurriness to some of the images. A lot of the printing runs were not high quality. So just be careful on that if you're looking for Burt Rosses.
Yep.
But they're out there and you can find them.
Yeah, they're not that hard to find. And like I said, if you look in the right places and you're a little diligent about it, you can get them at a pretty good price.
Yeah, that's another thing about.
There's also a maze in the 52. I remember there's a maze in the 52, which is also way expensive.
Yeah, I would think so. The cool thing about all these sets is we've talked through we've thrown a lot at you guys, but feel free to rewatch the video if you need to, but or pick out different parts or pause it and go look for stuff. But the idea is that all these cards, none of these are like scarce, rare, hard to find. You go to any show, especially our experience in Strongsville, I saw Dandy and Red Hearts everywhere, and Burt Rosses and all this stuff. So at the National, they're plentiful. At your, local mall show or regional show, maybe a little bit harder to find, but there's going to be vintage dealers. And if you just ask, a lot of them won't put them out because they are under the radar, and they'll put out all their Topps cards and their Bowman cards of their superstars and their Mantles and Mays and Aaron's. Oh my. So just don't be afraid to ask if that's something you're looking for. Ask it, hey, do you have any Burt Ross, or do you have any, Dandy potato chip cards or Wilson Franks or whatever, and see at worst, they might say, oh, I do have those. I left them at home, because everybody only has so much space. They can only bring so much stuff. And maybe you make a contact with somebody that will hook you up and get you some cards. So, Dan, as we finish up here, tell everybody, again, I want everybody to go check out Dan's channel. I'll have a link on the YouTube video down below where you can go check out Dan's channel and look him over and see if you want to sub. But where can they find you?
They can find me. It's Dan's Vintage Baseball PC on YouTube. I don't really do Instagram. I have an Instagram, but I don't really do it. I'm on Twitter. If anybody does baseball Twitter, because there's a lot of us over there. That's why I really started to get back into vintage around 18, 19. It's at NYC Taper. And that's a whole different other story. But the best place to find me is on YouTube. My email is in the description of the channel. I try to answer questions in the comments. I try to interact. I know it gets a little harder as you get more subs. I'm up to about 560 at this point, so I'm getting there. But I don't have a Mike Moynihan. However, what do you have, about $6,000 or something?
Yeah, 8,000.
or your friend Chris Sewell, one of my favorite channels of all time. A gentleman I've met a couple of times. He's your friend, so totally
I do know.
Dude. Great channel to watch. I think he's up to 64,000 or something like that. So
yeah, I've only talked to Chris 3 times today already. So great dude. What you just said something. I don't want to just gloss over it because I want to ask you a question about it. You said you got back into vintage in 2018, 2019. What drew you back into vintage, back into collecting vintage stuff?
So it's a long story. Since I'm 60 years old, I have a long story. But the last part of the story is that I have for my entire life wanted to complete my first set that I collected as a kid, which is 1970 tops. And I found a deal on eBay. I was just going through eBay and looking through stuff. I found a deal for, 450 cards for, 150 bucks, some crazy number. And the cards, most of them were actually pretty good. So I decided at that point that I was going to do it. I was finally going to do it. I was going to complete the final set. I had some left over from my old collection. And that kind of started me going down. And then I was like, I finished 70. Now I'm going to do 71, which was my second set. So, and then it just started to, and there's some guys on Twitter that I'm friends with who, they call my friend Mark Del Franco, they call him the enabler, because he will encourage you to keep getting more and more. And that's kind of what happened. And then it just kind of grew. And a lot of what I have now in like behind me is stuff that either I had some of when I was a kid or stuff I couldn't afford when I was a kid. And so, that's really, it's a story that I started back in 1970 that I collected a lot in high school also with a bunch of friends. I collected when my nephew was like 10 years old in like the late 80s. And then in 2012, I lost a third of or a half of my collection to Hurricane Sandy because it was in my parents' basement. So that I went out in 2012, got what I could get out of my collection then, and started to realize what I had and didn't have. But the real spurring thing, like I said, was the 1970 set that I decided now is the time I'm going to complete this. And that kind of got me going again.
And then how did you discover content creators out there, whether podcast or YouTube, and how'd you get into that?
Basically Ryan Nolan. He was in my private vintage group on Twitter, and he would link to his channel. So I started watching his channel. And then, of course, as you know, YouTube sends you to other people. And then I started watching Chris, and then you, and then a bunch of different other people. And that sort of caused me to think that, hey, I have stories to share. So maybe I can do this too. And I speak professionally for a living. So,
Yeah.
Figured it would be better to do that.
Yeah, it's always funny to hear how people go down the rabbit hole, right? And where they come out. And would you say once Ryan started feeding the beast and you started watching Ryan's channel and others, what has that done to your collecting? Has it expanded your horizons? What has it done for you?
Oh, absolutely. And then I got to know Alex Bowman 53 because I was completing the 53 Bowman set. And he was very encouraging to me to start a channel also. As you know, he's a terrific guy. And
He is.
He was like my enabler for YouTube. It's like, and then so that, yeah, there you go.
And now you have more friends than you can shake a stick at. So
yeah, that experience in Strongsville was really quite moving to me in many ways, because it was people that I'd seen on YouTube and people that I felt like I knew. And a lot of them, I'll tell you, it's really amazing. A lot of them, when you meet them in person, they're the same as they are on their channel. There's no like pretense with a lot of the hobby guys, especially the vintage guys who are there for the love of collecting. When you meet them face to face, same guys, which is wonderful.
That's totally true. Are you going to the National this year?
Yeah. In fact, I'm in the I'm in the Airbnb with, I guess, like 12 or 14 other YouTube guys that Matt put together. So pretty happy about that.
Well, if you thought Strongsville was great, wait till the National, because it's a whole nother level of awesome. And how many people when we get together, and
yeah,
it's pretty special. So
I did. I went to the National Atlantic City, and most of my hangouts then were my Twitter friends, many of whom have been on my channel ultimately. But that was fun. But I have never had a time in the hobby like I had at Strongsville because of the amount of people. And just the way people were. It was just sort of everybody rooting for everyone else, which is really, very encouraging.
When you get excited about somebody else's pickup more than your own,
Yep.
That's when that's absolutely genuine. And mild jealousy on my part. I know Steven got the 48, 49 Leaf Jackie, and I was very jealous but so excited for him, that is so cool that we were able to get that and stuff that Orlando would get or whoever, right? Except for Chris. I don't like Chris getting good cards because then he beats me in Showcase Showdown. But, just kidding. Of course, it's fantastic. And it's a real community, and I'm glad you're experiencing that wonderful part of the community.
Yep.
And it'll only grow for you. It'll only get better.
Yeah, no, when I saw Chris, I was like, I immediately said to myself, this guy is one of those guys that just has a charisma about him in person. And he's just like everybody was kind of just he was making sure everybody had a good time. And you can't, I don't know how you can, thank somebody for that. It's just, I tried to. I shook his hand the next day in the lobby of the hotel. Said, thank you for putting that together. But, he's kind of a humble guy, too. So it wasn't.
He is.
It wasn't something that he really wanted attention for. But, so that was nice.
Well, Dan, thank you so much for revisiting or reopening, hopefully, some eyes out there to these wonderful sets that are out there. Go check them out. Go check out Dan's channel. And I'll be on yours, I guess, in a few weeks. So
yep,
definitely be watching for that and go check out Dan's other content while you're waiting on me to show up there. Thanks, everybody, for watching this week. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon and keep collecting.
Thanks, Mike.
You bet.